In this video, I want to explain my personal approach to EMF and why I take the position that I do. I'm a building biologist, which means my work sits in the intersection of building science, environmental health, and human biology. At its core, my role is to understand how the built environment interacts with the human body. If you're anything like me, you probably find yourself in an interesting place, right? You appreciate modern technology and everything electricity provides us. Let's be honest, nobody wants to go back to living in a cave sending smoke signals. But at the same time, you're aware that EMF exposure levels today are higher than anything humans have encountered before. They continue to increase, and at the very least, they have the potential to influence our biology in ways we don't yet fully understand. EMF is also one of the most loaded and contentious areas in environmental health today. As a society, we've become deeply attached to and dependent on technologies that rely on electromagnetic fields. That naturally creates resistance from ourselves, because we love the convenience this technology provides, myself included. And resistance from industry, which has strong financial incentives for EMF not to be viewed as a problem. I would love nothing more than for long-term EMF exposure to be conclusively proven safe. It is still classified as a Class 2B carcinogen, and we live in a world surrounded by it. We just can't see it. You know, if we could, we'd probably be freaking out. Believe me, the irony is not lost on me. I wrote this on a laptop, connected to Wi-Fi, powered by electricity, recorded on a phone, connected to 5G, and uploaded to the internet. You know, I get it. I need my phone, I use electricity, and I use and love this technology too. I'm not a tinfoil hat guy, but I also don't bury my head in the sand, you know, like complete elimination is unrealistic. But this doesn't have to be your all or nothing conversation. There is a fundamental principle in building biology called the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle is about taking sensible, proportionate steps to reduce unnecessary environmental exposures where credible evidence suggests potential risk. What we really want to pay attention to when it comes to low-level chronic EMF exposure is where we spend the most time. This is about reducing exposure over long periods. You know, walk past a Wi-Fi router every now and then, it's not going to be a problem. But having that router right next to your bed, where you're exposed to it 8 hours a night, every night, look, that's a very different situation. For myself and for most of my clients, I take a practical, realistic, but precautionary approach. That means asking a simple question. How can we reduce unnecessary exposure and mitigate potential risk while still living fully in the modern world? This approach may seem measured or conservative, and that's intentional. You know, I live by what I preach, and I'm not going to tell you to not use Wi-Fi if I use it myself. And if I told people to eliminate technology entirely, you know, I'd lose most of them immediately because it's unrealistic, including myself. But if I can show practical strategies that significantly reduce exposure while still allowing you to live your life, then I can actually be of value. One important caveat to the precautionary approach is that it is not a one-size-fits-all issue. Human susceptibility varies in everything, and if there are biological effects, most of them don't feel them. Some may feel minor effects, but likely don't join the dots. You know, things like headaches, tinnitus, and fatigue. But for some, it can be debilitating, a condition known as electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS. I've personally witnessed someone I deeply care about suffer from EHS. So if that's you, I feel for you, and my general calm precautionary approach doesn't apply to you. The existence of a susceptible population to EMF is a signal worth paying attention to. In environmental health, that group is the canary in the coal mine. Interestingly, it's not often the most susceptible individuals who develop serious illness later in life, because they tend to reduce exposure early. It's often those who feel nothing, assume there's no issue, and unknowingly carry chronic environmental stress for years, who run into problems further down the track. For some of us, this work is essential for general well-being. Some people really suffer, but for the majority of us, it's easy to dismiss it because we're surrounded by it and we don't feel any problems. For us, it's about reducing a potential chronic environmental stressor, something that may act quietly and cumulatively over time rather than acutely in the moment. From that perspective, EMF management is a precautionary, long-term health decision, much like improving indoor air quality, reducing chemical exposure, or managing light and noise in sleeping environments. Ignoring environmental stresses doesn't make them disappear, it just delays the feedback. Another concept that many people don't often consider is something called toxic load, which refers to the cumulative and synergistic effects of all the exposures our bodies have to deal with over time. Things like chemicals, air pollution, mold, heavy metals, and even factors like electromagnetic fields. On their own, any one of these exposures may be relatively small, but when you start to add them all up together, day after day and year after year, the total burden on the body adds up. So if someone is serious about long-term health, it's important to think about the big picture, not just one exposure in isolation, but the total load that the body is being asked to handle over time. The good news is there are practical, achievable steps you can take. The first step in anything is awareness, right? Well, you've gotten this far, so I think you can tick that one off the box. The next step is around testing. Identify sources and understanding patterns. The only way to know what your exposure levels are is through testing. And then it's up to you to decide what trade-offs you're comfortable to make. That philosophy underpins everything I offer in my education, assessments, and allowing practical steps that allow you to live well in the modern world while respecting environmental health. And that, my friends, is my practical approach to EMF in the built environment. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested to learn the exact methodology that's used in a professional EMF assessment to test your own environment, I have an online course available, a step-by-step walkthrough of how to do it and what the numbers actually mean. And I also have online Zoom consultations available where we can chat about anything EMF. So www.expandedconcepts.com if you're interested for that. Thanks for watching.